Of we as in women empowerment. This is Women's History Month, and I have made the commitment to you from me that I was going to go live or create a pre-recorded video or do something on my YouTube channel for the 31 days of March. And we are now here on the 28th day of March, and we are still going. I have not stopped. I've not skipped a day. This is, I mean, it has been a really, really strong and difficult challenge for me, especially like the last couple days. So like yesterday, you saw my immigrant story, or you viewed it, or you listened to it, part one, and it got really emotional for me. I was not in my regular setup, and surprisingly, in this garage, my husband's, even though it's our garage, it's my husband uses it all the time, and it's kind of like his little caveman or man cave. So anyways, I am also not in my normal setup today. And I am telling you part two of my immigrant story. So I told you the story of my broken English. I arrived here with broken English, and I went from broken English to broke in 4 months. Okay. I told you all of that story. I told you how I became an insurance professional and what I said to the energy and God and whoever you believe in, the universe. And I declared. It was about declaration for me. And it's always worked that way for me. So the first one is my part one, I shared with you the declaration and how the declaration of your life works towards the benefits for you, towards your benefit. Today, what I'm going to share with you, the part two of my story, is how difficult, as if part one was already not a difficult journey, right? But how is it really when you are starting in this country? My first ride, I shared with you, my first job was a Walmart cashier making $7.25 an hour. My first ride was above and beyond the free bus that runs around the city. My first real ride that I owned was a $20 bike I got from a garage sale. And like, if I close my eyes, I can still remember what that bike exactly looked like and which garage sale I bought it from. And that was my first ride. It was a $20 bike I bought from a garage sale as an immigrant to this country. And 2 years later, and this is the essence of what I want to share with you, the smart survival. Because there's a smart way of surviving when you're new to this country. The essence of what I wanted to share with you yesterday, and if you've missed part one, you can go back to part one. But the essence that I want to share with you today, or the essence that I wanted to share yesterday, was about declaration. When you declare what you want, you will achieve it. When you declare what you want, you will achieve it. That was what I wanted to, with the essence of my share yesterday. Tonight, the essence of my share is about taking the steps. It's about not being afraid to take the steps. Like, I was new to this country. My first ride was a $20 bike from a garage sale. 2 years later, I sold the same bike for the same amount of money on Craigslist. And so with that story alone, and I call it smart surviving, right? Smart survival. I wanted to share that essence with you on this part two, is to really see how do you survive in a smart way. Why was that smart? Hello, Sean, how are you? Why was that smart? Is because I got to use the bike. I got to use the bicycle for 2 years for free because I bought it for 20 bucks from a garage sale. And then I sold it on Craigslist for 20 bucks 2 years later. Smart surviving. By then, I was already working for the financial institution bank, Wells Fargo Bank. And the other thing, the other essence I want to share with you tonight is not being afraid to take the step, not being afraid to ask for it. You have to ask for it. When I became a Wells Fargo teller, and I was very timid, like in the Wells Fargo world, as a teller, you are in a sales position and you are in the front line and you have to ask. Like at that time, I'm gonna age myself. At that time, online banking was just coming out. And the company wanted to sign up everybody for online banking. It was the hot shit at that time. And I was so timid because I was afraid to be judged with my English at that time, having a broken English, being an immigrant to this country. I was afraid to speak. Speaking was something I was so afraid of. And I know it's the biggest fear everybody has, but I was more fearful of being judged by other people when I let go of my English. I'm from the Philippines, Sean. And when I let go of my English, I could always I feel like I imagine people laughing with my English. And so I was timid, I was quiet, I was meek. And when I got this Wells Fargo job as a child, I always wanted to work for a bank. It's just that like nice professional clothes as a young girl. I just had that image all my life, right? And I got this job at Wells Fargo because of my first check from Walmart. Remember, my first job was Walmart. When I got my first check, I actually took it back to the HR payroll office and I said to them, I want cash. And the lady kind of giggled and said, oh, it doesn't work that way. You have to go to the bank. You have to have an account and you have to deposit that to the bank. Because at that time I was a young adult. I never had bank accounts. I literally came here as a young adult, not knowing all of that, right? So everything that I was about to know when I lived in the Philippines got halted. And then I came to America and I had to continue to find my way through that. And so I said, well, where's the nearest bank? And the HR lady or payroll lady says, oh, there's a Wells Fargo in the Albertsons down the road. So I go over there and it reminded me of my childhood dream to work for a bank. And I go over there and I had to come back because I didn't have a bank account. They wouldn't cash my check or open my account because I had to have 2 forms of identification. And so the next day I go back, they open my account, rest was history. And then I started befriending the manager. And here's what I want to teach you. Don't be afraid. Like, even though I was afraid to speak, I was not afraid to ask for what I was wanting in life. And so I asked them, how do I get a job here? And they gave me an 800 number. It's like an interview over the telephone. They gave me an 800 number and they said, call that. It's gonna be a personality test. You're gonna press 5. If you strongly agree, you're gonna press 1. If you strongly disagree, and then there's something in between. I failed miserably the first time. So I went back to my friends at the bank and I said, hey, I failed. Nobody came on the phone because they said if you passed, somebody will come on the phone. And so I failed. The second time, another lesson I want to leave you with is don't give up. I'm drinking my sleepy time tea because I am going to be sleepy time after this. Never give up. So I failed the first time. I went and there was like a 14-day waiting period, I think. So I went and called that number again. But before I went, I asked the manager, I go, how do I make sure I pass this time? And he said, be politically correct with your answers. You guys, I know that a lot of you might be so new to America right now. I know that a lot of you might be young adults that are going through this process and you've never taken any personality test before. And you think you're just gonna be super duper 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 honest about your answers. He said, just be politically correct. And so I did, and somebody came on the phone on the other side, and I got a phone interview. Then after the phone interview, I got the letter in the mail saying that I was invited to a group interview. So I went to the group interview. But here's what I learned. There's a way to get what you want if you ask around before you go get it. So because I learned to ask how I'm gonna pass this personality test, and I was told you just have to be politically correct, and I passed it after I learned that, I did the same thing with the group interview. I've never been in a group interview. Remember, I was an immigrant in the Philippines, and I've never gone through any of that. So I go to the group, or I call Marcus again, or I walk in the bank and I say, hey, I got invited for a group interview. And by then, Marcus really wanted to hire me because I was just hungry. I was a go-getter. Like, if you see somebody coming back and never giving up, wouldn't you want to hire them, and wouldn't you want them to be part of your team? And that's another lesson for you. If you want something, you got to want it bad enough that you will do whatever is necessary, even before you get paid, and go get it done. So I go before my group interview and I go, hey, how do I ace this group interview, Marcus? Because I really want to work with you. He said, every time they ask a question, raise your hand. And I'm like, holy cow, I'm scared to speak, especially in a group setting. Raise your hand. I'm like, you know what? The other side of this is going to be my fate, and it's going to be my job, my dream job at the time. So I went and I asked questions, or I raised my hands when they had questions, and I realized that that's what made me stand out amongst the crowd of potential tellers, and the rest was history. Let's drink to that. The rest was history. Every time I got the part-time bank teller job, and by the way, I still kept my Walmart job. So here was my life in the beginning. I had my Walmart job getting paid $7.25 an hour. I had the swing shift. I worked from 3 p.m. to midnight. But I got a part-time job at Wells Fargo as a teller. And my goal was to never, I will not be in the part-time teller position forever. It was just the beginning to an end, or it was the means to an end. So I work at Wells Fargo. They designed my schedule from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Remember, they're in the Albertsons, grocery store. They call that an in-store branch. Sorry, my throat is not feeling well right now. They scheduled me from 10 to 2 because they knew I had a second job from 3 to midnight. So guys, I would work from 10 to 2. I would get off at 2 p.m. and I would eat my lunch on the way to my second job, walking on foot to Walmart. From Wells Fargo to Walmart, I would walk and eat while I'm walking to my second job. And then I would work from 3 to midnight. And the particular Walmart that I worked at closed at 10. It wasn't a 24-hour Walmart. And when it comes time to close at 10, it got quiet. I didn't have any interaction with people. I wasn't doing cashiering and talking to people. It got really lonely and quiet, and I would just cry. I would take all the go backs. Go backs are those things that you all don't put back on their shelf where they belong, and we go put them back. While putting those go backs in, I would just be in tears and miss home a lot. In fact, right now, I so value my peace and quietness. But when, at this age, I value my peace and quiet. But when you're new to this country as an immigrant, it's not valuable. Because peace and quiet makes you really sad and makes you cry so hard because you miss home. I remembered when my sister and we lived with my aunt, my mom and dad. My mom and dad shared a bedroom. They rented to my aunt. My aunt had a 4-bedroom house. And then my sister and I rented to my aunt as well and shared a bedroom. And then my brother would sleep on the couch. He was 11 then. I remembered because she also had a really late shift. We would just lay down on the bed, stare at the ceiling, and talk about home and just cry all night. We just cry. She was 18 and I was 21 because we just miss home. And we got, obviously we got through that 24 years later in America, but being new to this country can get really isolated and can get really sad. I am so fortunate to have had my family with me, especially my sister, to have during this process. And that's my part too. I eventually actually went back home to the Philippines to finish my degree. When I left the Philippines, I had one more semester left on my accounting degree, Bachelor of Science in Accounting, and we study American textbooks there. So I left Wells Fargo, I went back, I left everything. I saved enough money 18 months later. Here's the other thing. When you're new to this country, you save a lot of money because you don't have friends to spend your money with. You don't have anywhere to go to spend your money with. So as soon as I had enough money to go back to school, I went back home, paid my way through the rest of it. And I stayed there for 6 months until I finished my degree, came back with a degree, knocked back at Wells Fargo's door, and I got what they call a customer sales and service representative job. So what happened was I was a part-time teller, and as a part-time teller, I wanted to move up to full-time. And so here's what I always said to my boss. What's next? What's next after this? Because I want to perform as if I already have the job. The key to a quick promotion is to perform according to what is next for you while you were still in the other job. That's the key to a fast promotion. So I go, what's next? Well, full-time teller. Okay, what do I have to do to become that next year? And I become that in 3 months. 3 months. So what I did was instead of working 2 jobs, or instead of working full-time at Walmart, I flipped the switch. I worked full-time at Wells Fargo and part-time at Walmart. And eventually, I quit my Walmart job because I started moving up in the financial and banking industry. And one of the things that I want to leave you with as I go and finish this YouTube live, I said, don't give up. Number two, always go for the next. Always ask, what's next? What's next? What's next? Because asking what's next has paid me more money than anything else. Not that I'm never satisfied, but I'm always hungry. Let me repeat that. Not that I'm never satisfied, but I'm always hungry. When you're always hungry, it's all about the growth. The money just becomes a byproduct. When you're always hungry, it's all about the growth. What's next? What's next? And so every year I moved up in the banking industry because I'm always asking what's next. And when my supervisor said, this is what's next, I just said, what do I have to do so that I can act as if I already have the job? And what happens is when you act as if like you already have the job, they have no choice but to give you the job when the job is available. Because you're already acting as if you already have the job for your next promotion. That's the fastest way to get a promotion. And that's the fastest way I got a promotion. Eventually, I moved to the Pacific Northwest from Southern California. And my move brought me to a new career. From 8 years in banking, actually when I moved here, I became a relationship manager for a local bank. And so remember, I was part-time teller, personal banker, relationship manager in Southern California before I moved. I also got a relationship manager position when I moved. And then I became VP of commercial lending. And I started doing the other side of banking from retail, which is the branch. The branches are called retail. And then I started working on the other side, which is commercial and business banking. And I really enjoyed that part. I got to talk to a lot of businesses. I got exposed to a lot of multimillionaires, and this is where the fun begins. And I will tell you all about that in my part 3 of my immigrant story, about what I was exposed to in the greatest sense that gave me that view further than I could ever see, the vision further that I could ever see, because I was exposed to it. Hi, Ratish. Guys, thank you so much for being here. I will share my part 3 tomorrow. And I'm gonna mark this because I'm gonna forget where I ended. I'm closing this and ending this at the mark where I moved to the Pacific Northwest from Southern California, and my first job was a relationship manager for a local community bank. And that was when it became really fun for me. I was exposed to so much good. Please watch the replay, and I will see you tomorrow. My immigrant story, this was part 2. Watch part 1, and then tomorrow is part 3. Bye for now. Thanks for being here, guys.